Of course, it was a big celebration in San Francisco and Oakland because they waited until both of them were finished for that celebration. And I remember we went over there, and of course they had a parade, and I was on the float. Well, because I was at Cal, and the city of Oakland, I guess, asked the employment agency at Cal if they could supply some girls for the float. So I got the one that had bib overalls on, and a plaid shirt. I was industry or something, I don't remember. Oh, big summer. They had people all along. Yeah, I can remember we went over and had dinner, and I think it was only $1.50 or $2. And you had how many courses? Wine and everything else.
Oh, listen, they didn't drive. Everybody used buses and trains. You wouldn't think of driving to work or anything. And then you had the ferries, to go to San Francisco, and it's just amazing. I think back sometimes, I think these people have no idea what it was like. We could get to San Francisco faster than they do today. You line up with your car, and that's the scary part to me, was they had to bring them so close to, the edge and pack so many of them in, and it was really scary, But personally, in some ways, it was nicer because you could see things, watch the water, the fish, and all that. Oh, it was interesting. It was fun. The only thing is you had to be careful, but the water was rough, you'd get sick.
1925, I think it was. He got word that they needed people up here to work on the trains, on the key system at that time, which is an interurban trains. They had two of them here when we moved here. The red cars were the Southern Pacific, and we didn't have anything to do with those. And then the key system was the other one. I think key system had more tracks than the red cars. And of course, they had several lines. My father worked on different ones. And they went out to the mole. Ferries docked them at the mole. And the trains went out to the mole and then discharged. They got on the ferries. And the ferries were great. They didn't have a whole complete breakfast, but a lot of people had coffees and stuff to have for breakfast if you wanted. As far as I can tell, he liked his job. He liked anything he had to do with the streetcars. I know he got a kick out of people.
Oh yeah, I wanted to get out of Lodi, so my sister and I moved to Berkeley, California, and we had a little old house there that we rented, and we went to San Francisco, and that's when I noticed that they had girl toll collectors. Luckily, I passed the test, and I got a job on the bridge as a toll collector. That's the first, my first job. Well, they were just surprised because, before the war started, it was all men. I think a lot of them were surprised to see women toll collectors because, one, I had kind of long nails, and they used to say they wanted to drop the quarter in my hand because they were afraid I was going to scratch. Bay Bridge meant a lot to me because I like work there very much, and that's all I can say. And I look back now, I always think, well, I had part of the first Bay Bridge, and I always had some nice soft feelings about it.
The bridge is a living thing because it's made out of steel and it has to be maintained, otherwise it's going to go down. And coveralls, okay, and jackets because it's cold out there. Yeah, and make sure you always had, if you wanted something to bite for lunch or something to drink, you took it with you, and a hat. They didn't even have hard hats when I went to work there. Nobody wore hard hats, and as far as safety belts, well, you was given one, nobody wore them. Well, before we got to sandblasting, we also steam cleaned the areas that we had to, we steam cleaned them. All the years of salt water spray and stuff like that. Then we go in and sandblast the areas that needed it, which is spot blasting, wherever the rust was at. And then we'd go in and we'd prime with the red lead all the places we sandblasted, as well as the rivets and edges of all the section you're in. And then a few days later, we go in and put on a second coat of the same places, all rivets and edges. At that time, most of the rust, if we had rust, we sandblasted it off. It's not like today. We used to do it the old-fashioned way and the right way, which is sandblast it down to bare metal and go through the whole system of paint. Because now you can't even sandblast on the bridge unless you totally close in the one area you're blasting, and you've got to recover and clear the air. You can't let any sand or water go into the bay. You've got to catch it and bring it in for hazardous waste. A lot of times we put on 2 coats of finished red lead, and then we put on 2 coats of aluminum. Whether it's spray or brush or roll, depends what area you're in. I just love to spray paint. You get a lot done and without much work. Well, on the upper deck, we didn't do much spraying because we get cars. And on the side of the bridge, between the decks, we also did that by brush and roll. And the cantilever section up above the high stuff was all brush and roll, hardly any spraying at all. The lower deck, we sprayed just about everything on the lower deck. Fill a bucket from the upper deck up in the cantilever down, you probably hit 30, 40 cars. I mean, I think it happened once or twice in the 10 years that I was there, or actually my whole life that I was there, yeah. It's a long ways down there. And sometimes we'd time it, and I forgot, we used to take a bucket of paint and check your wristwatch and drop it and see how long it take to get to the water. It's a beautiful place. It is, looking down, yeah. It's really what you see down there, yeah. One thing I did notice in the years I was there, and that's how the bay cleaned up. Because when I went to work there in '59, the bay was a sewer, basically. Everything you seen floating down there, including all the sewerage from Oakland and that area there, we used to dump out there in the bay about halfway out, and it was just a constant mess. And later on it got to be clear. Now it's clear. It's a nice clean bay.
I'm a people person. I really like people. I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. I like the action of being in traffic, dodging cars, and I like the excitement that might come along with maybe it's an accident, a car fire, or a suicide perhaps, or something. I like that. I still, on occasion, they'll call me over and I'll drive tow trucks on overtime, because I would do that for free because I love it so much. I really do. Well, number one, when we get out on the bridge, we're in a lane of traffic. Normally on the freeway, you're on a shoulder, but here you're in the lane of traffic. So precaution-wise, the trucks are equipped with red lights, sirens, warning amber lights. We put flares out. The truck is basically like a fire truck. It has a water tank on it for putting out car fires. Safety precautions, you really have to listen to it's not just visually looking, you have to listen to the traffic. You need to look at cars over here, and you just start kind of watching how things are going and listening. And when it gets really quiet, you stop and think, why is it quiet? And you look, and yeah, it's just certain things seem out of sorts. And you always have to really be looking, because otherwise someone can plow into you. And it's just the blink of an eye. I mean, I don't know the exact stats, but there's a lot of highway workers, and we'll go away from tow truck, but just highway workers in general for Caltrans. A lot of highway workers are killed each year because of errant drivers. It just takes a moment. Someone putting makeup on, cell phone. I'm going to hate when this one comes down, because I really like it. It's something that I went across when I was a kid even. And now I've worked here, I've got to touch it, I've got to climb on it. Inclement weather, I've been out here for everything, and it's going to go. And now we're going to have a masterpiece, which is going to be a beautiful bridge when it's all said and done, but I'm going to miss this. I'm a blue collar kind of person, and this is a blue collar bridge. The other one is more like for Hollywood. I hate to say that, but that's the only way I can put it. It's rivets, it's steel. dirty at times. It's just something that it's a means to an end to get by. You're working, you got to cross this thing, but it's still looking out for you, it's taking care of you. I don't know, I can't describe it. I really have affections for these bridges, I really do. And I know that's going to sound sappy, I really don't care. Hey, I tell you what, working on this bridge right here, they're all nice, but working on this one, because you get to see San Francisco, you get to see Oakland, there's boats, there's waves, there's nothing like it. I mean, this is like, people travel all over the world to come here, and I get to look at it and get paid for it. No, it is. I love working on this bridge, and just the view that you get from it. There's never a dull view for me. And I don't care what time of year, it could be storming, it's beautiful. Midnight, pitch black, it's beautiful. It is. It's a beautiful place to work. It really is.
There were two real separate areas of the Bay Bridge. One was tow service, which involved the tow trucks and keeping the roadway clear. And then the others, and that was at the toll plaza. That was headquartered at the toll plaza. That's where you reported. And then the other aspect of the maintenance was really the maintenance. That's what we called maintenance. The other was called tow service. Maintenance consisted of crews in steel crew, concrete crew, building maintenance crew, lane closure crew. You know, I remember we always wore coveralls out there. We were the bridge crews wore coveralls, whereas the people out on the highways never wore coveralls, but we were always cold. Always had hooded sweatshirts, and you let your hair grow long, and you had beards and things, because the weather out there today would be so miserable out there working. You're freezing. It's really surprising with all the work in the traffic, on climbing, on the structure itself, and that. There were very few real serious injuries of any kind. I was very surprised. Safety was a real concern, and everybody kind of took their time, and we were always cautioning each other to be careful, and to, when you were climbing on the structure, to make sure you were tied off, take your time, be aware where you were in traffic, and so forth. But on the Bay Bridge, we had a 7-mile lane closure, so you would be putting the cones out. I did that quite a bit too, where you would put out a whole, 7 miles of lane closure, almost 7 miles, and then picking it up. You would be picking up the cones and tossing them and catching them, and you'd have 2 guys in the back of a cone truck. One guy would be, either placing them or picking them up, and we had these smaller cones in those days where you could toss them, and then the one guy would be sitting there and he'd catch them and he'd stack them. Worked on the steel crew. So the steel crew just, basically you worked on the steel, and you worked on the bridge from water line up to the top of the tower. We would work on we had a work boat, the D.E. Marsh, and we would work on the fenders, the pier caps, the piers themselves of the towers. They're protected by wooden fender system. So occasionally boats would hit it. One of the times when there were 3 of us, I remember we were on the pier itself, and I think I had the chainsaw going. I was cutting one of the timbers to size, and I finished cutting, and one of the guys said to me, did you throw something in the water? And I kind of looked at him, and the other guy kind of looked at me, and we looked out in the water, and all of a sudden this guy comes flying up out of the water. He had jumped from the lower deck, and he had missed this pier cap probably about 10 feet, maybe 8 feet. He had just missed landing on us. And he hit the water. And he came up, it was like a cork shot out of a bottle. He just came up, probably to his waist, out of the water. Zeus rising. And we had a life ring there in case one of us had fallen in. We had life preservers on because you're working around the water, and we had heard cars, brakes and things squealing tires squealing on the upper deck, and he had jumped. He had jumped over the side, off the lower deck. And so we immediately got on the radio, and he blows out some water. And I looked at him in the eyes, and there was no focus there, but he was blinking, and he was alert. And he was alive, and he starts treading water. And it was sort of an ebb tide, but boy, he went down south. He was heading to San Mateo pretty fast. So we got on the radio, called our dispatcher. He called the Coast Guard, and a sailboat was coming by, and they picked the guy up, I guess. But he survived. He survived. And he had just gotten out of, I think he had gotten out of Mission General or something. He had some sort of schizophrenic thing, and his friend was driving him home in lane 3 on the lower deck, and he just, I don't know, he just opened the car door, jumped out, and ran over to the side and jumped. But he survived, but it took a toll on us. We would occasionally go through with the workboat. The workboat had a monitor, like a fire hose type thing, cannon on it, and we would wash the pier caps from all the bird guano. Says all the seagulls and whatever else, would be pretty thick on there sometimes. And the electricians had to go out there once a week and check the fog. They were bells in those days. They were literally bells. Or actually, they were horns, but they were copper. So the electricians would have to go down there once a week. So they didn't want to step on these slippery, guano-coated, pier caps. So we would go through there occasionally and wash them all off. It's like a lot of other things when I was talking about, doing things with your hands and doing manual labor and stuff. So you're doing something, you're creating something, you're putting yourself into something. And, you can see it. You drive by. To this day, I drive on the bridge and I'm looking at the deck and seeing some of the patches that we'd done and some of the guardrail, the concrete repairs that we had done. So you can see the fruits of your labor, so to say. And so it kind of becomes part of you. That's what you do. And it doesn't go away. I know that bridge pretty well. Like I said, I've been from every tower to every pier cap to inside the anchorages, and so it was a big adventure too. It was my youth too. So it was that was my work. With the Bay Bridge, it was you would be out there working, and it was obviously a big pulsating steel sort of life in itself, but it's also, when you get up to the top of the towers and you look around and you say, wow, this thing really, it was sort of like a machine in the garden. It was this big hunk of industry with all this stuff and what it's doing, and it's keeping this blood flowing through the arteries of, transit from the East Bay to San Francisco and back and forth. And, but the beauty around it. So it's kind of a combination of both. It's all part of that thing, and it's so unique in itself. And as you get to know it, there are certain parts about it that you understand, but yet it's so unique in that it is this. It's always something to behold when you drive it. It's wow, yeah, it's amazing structure.
So engineering, it was engineering in the raw. It wasn't something you can just pull out of a textbook and start doing. So it was interesting. To me, it was always interesting. I was lucky. I ended up being in charge of the design engineering section that was left and maintenance contracts, and also we had the maintenance inspection crew. And we worked very closely with the lab in Sacramento because things were changing. Corrosion, the paints were changing, so corrosion was increasing. What we didn't know, they filled in knowledge. They had one of the best labs in the world at the time. And they would come down and help us do the inspection if it was something that needed to be done. But what I brought in from the field was how concrete and steel corrode, which they've never heard before. So a design can be structurally sound, but from maintenance standpoint, it can be structurally horrifying to see what happens to it. this is for the benefit of the designers, if it ever gets back to them, is that the Bay Area is a saltwater climate. And no matter what you put out there, you have to protect it. And when you design it, you have to design it for protection and maintain it. Well, we should have learned what you surmise is noise, not what Mother Nature has in store for you. Before you settle to be a designer, go through everything, and that includes maintenance and inspection, and learn what Mother Nature does, the things that you can design it in, even if the code doesn't say it. Because Mother Nature's going to kill us before anything else does. It's a living thing. It's moving all the time. And if you don't believe me, walk across to one of them. And you know, the temperature at the Bay Bridge would move, the bridge would move 12, 14 inches a day from temperature. And if you're sitting on a table, it's interesting. I had a unique position. You go out, you could sit on the cable, and as the trucks go across, you could feel the truck go across the bridge, or and they're alive. They're always alive, and they make sounds. And if you listen to the sounds will tell you whether they have problems. Because if they start screeching and yelling at you, you better start looking a little closer at things.
It was incredible. You know, there was nothing that came near it. And you could say, I mean, when I answered the phone at my job, and people have a question about the bridge, and you could tell them it's the longest bridge in the world. It has the deepest bridge piers ever built. It was built in the middle of the Depression. It was, it is the workhorse. It carries more traffic than all the other bridges combined in the Bay Area. It's the money raised from the tolls go to fix all the other bridges. It's just one thing after another about how incredible this thing was.